All right, so in this video, I want to talk about why it's important that a U.S. company should always collect a Form W-9 before they make payment to a vendor or a contractor, right? This is very, very important because you as the U.S. company may be obligated to report those payments to the IRS on a Form 1099, and then the payee gets a copy as well. And additionally, you might also be required to withhold taxes on the payments to those persons or that company. So a U.S. company that makes payments in the ordinary course of its trade or business might be required to report these payments on 1099s, which requires the W-9 because you need to collect the recipient's name, address, and U.S. taxpayer ID number. These are all fields that are reported on 1099, and you need all of these elements in order to get the 1099s filed with the IRS and have them accepted. Now, payments are only reported if they're made in the course of a trade or business. So personal payments are not reported. So for example, if John hires James to mow his lawn at his personal home and he pays James $700 during the year, the $700 is a personal payment by John to James because John is not making this payment in the course of his trade or business. This is just his home, so it's his personal property. Now, James is probably running a landscaping business, so you're making a payment to a business, but the key issue here is who is the payor. In this case, John is the payor. He's not running a business. He just has his house, and he needs somebody to come mow the lawn, so he's hiring James's company to make the payments. In this case, there's no 1099 reporting, and there's no requirement for John to ask James to complete a W-9 to report his name, address, and taxpayer ID number. Okay, it's only if the payments are made by a trade or business. Now, if the payee refuses to provide a Form W-9 with a valid TIN, so taxpayer ID number, the payee, so that's the recipient, may be subject to backup withholding and penalties. So that's all covered under Section 6723. Now, for the 2021 tax year, backup withholding was 24% of the gross amount of payment. So this example here, John runs a consulting business and he hires Emily to build a marketing plan, and he's going to pay Emily $2,500. Now, John asks Emily to provide a Form W-9, and she refuses to do that, right? She doesn't want to provide her name and her Social Security number. Under this fact pattern, John must back up withhold $600 in taxes, which is 24% times $2,500 payment, the fee, and he sends the $600 to the IRS. Now, after he's done the backup withholding, he pay Emily the difference of $1,900. Now, after this is done, it's Emily's responsibility, if she wants to get her money back, to file a tax return, report the income of $2,500, report the backup withholding of $600, and she might be able to get that back, right? But again, this responsibility falls on the payor to collect the W-9. If it's not collected, then they have to backup withhold. Now, the payer should always collect a W-9 because you never really know until the end of the year whether you're going to have to report any of these payments on a 1099. Okay, so for example, with the 1099 NEC, this is for non-employee compensation, you've got to report all payments over $600 during the year. So theoretically, you could start a relationship with a contractor where you're thinking, okay, I'm hiring this person, I'm only going to pay them $200 during the year, so I don't need to worry about 1099 reporting. You don't collect the W-9. But then something happens, and it turns out that you have a longer relationship with the contractor, and now you've paid them more than $600 during the year. If that happens, now you need a W-9 because now you have to report the payments on a Form 1099 NEC. So that's why it's always a good onboarding process, and just make it habit to collect those W-9s from the very beginning. Now, failure to obtain a taxpayer ID number when required subjects both the payor and payee to penalties here. So there's reporting penalties, and then there's penalties for not furnishing all the information. Section 6109 of the code mandates that a payee provide a TIN when required. Right, so in this case, if the company reaches out to the payee and says, hey, I need a Form W-9, I need a TIN for our records, you've got to report it. If you don't want to report that information, then take your business elsewhere, right? Go somewhere elsewhere because you can't be hired to perform that project for this company. And then very specifically, Treasury Reg here outlines this language, right? So 6109-1B1 states that a U.S. person whose tax ID number must be included on a document filed by another person must give that TIN so required to the other person on request. So this is the language in the Treasury regs which does require a payee in this case to provide that TIN when asked to by a payor, right? So who are you providing a product or service to that you're going to eventually receive some type of compensation. Now, there are, you should always provide the W-9, but there are some exemptions to 1099 reporting. So if you ask a company to provide a W-9 and the company is a C Corp or an S Corp or an LLC that's taxed as a C Corp or an S Corp, you should still get the W-9 to verify that that's their tax status, but you don't have to report information on a 1099 for that year unless one of the exceptions applies. But the lesson learned here and the takeaway is that always get a Form W-9 before payment. If this is somebody you're engaging with that's a non-U.S. person, then now you're looking at Form W-8, one of those variations. But always collect this information before you make payments and before you sign a contract, or do it at the same time you're signing a contract, because all this information you are going to need to comply with all the IRS reporting and tax obligations. So that covers it. Thank you for watching. I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, please leave me a comment below on the video, and happy to help out wherever I can. Okay, thank you.